Thank you all for being here today. We really appreciate you guys being here. Today, we will be talking about what we are doing as the Counselors Not Cops Committee, and we want your feedback, your input, and your experiences with cops and counselors at Shelby County Schools. I will pass it on to Suha.
Hi guys, I'm Suha. So before we get into the actual listening session, we just want to confirm that everybody here knows how to annotate and use the text box or the chat to give their input, as we'll be using that as tools for the rest of this listening session. So if you guys could take a second and annotate your favorite fall themed things on this whiteboard, we would love that. Just a reminder that annotate is the little gray pencil, and you can go ahead and draw whatever you feel like from the best season of the year, which is fall. And I'll play some music as we're doing that. We'll just take a minute.
The record straight, I got Shelby, then just no press play. We could spin it all, you don't have to be alone. She said, if I'm killing time, but 24/7.
So I'm seeing a lot of really great stuff on the screen. We definitely have a couple artists in here. I love all the pumpkins. I have to admit to being a little bit confused by the dead face. Maybe it's a ghost. I think it's a ghost. I hope it's a ghost. Lots of pie and lots of leaves, all really, really festive stuff. And we have one more little game to play before we jump into the meat and bones of today's session. And yes, if you guys aren't able to annotate, that's totally fine. During the actual session, it's going to be completely possible to just type in the chat, and we'll definitely make sure to keep the chat popping. Oh, so we have Trinity. I saw her circle it with the Finding Waldo. So that's really cool. If you guys want to take a second and maybe introduce yourselves by saying your name and what school you go to in the chat, that'd be great as we move into introducing ourselves. And let me just clear the screen. So before we jump into our why for being here today, we want to take a second to introduce ourselves. So because I'm already talking, I can just start. And my name is Suha. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm a senior at Houston High School. And I'll pass it to Alana.
Hey y'all, I'm Alana. I use the pronouns she, her, and hers. I'm a junior at Central High School and I represent District 10. And I'll pass it to Naraya.
Hi guys, my name is Nuraya. I use she, her pronouns. I am a junior at Arlington High School and I represent District 1. I will be passing it back to Suha.
So you guys may have noticed that this listening session is called a listening session. And the reason for that is that it's us listening to your guys' voice, because as we continue on through the rest of the year and do our work as a council, we want to make sure that we're honoring the voices of the youth in Shelby County that we're supposed to represent. So our reason for being here today is to really open up the chance to hear and understand your guys' perspectives on the situation with school resource officers in schools, how you feel about your counselors within your schools currently, if there's anything that you feel like needs a change to happen, and whether or not you think that it's something possible right now. And so we really just want to gain knowledge, hear feedback, and give you guys a space to like really have your dynamic perspectives show and be heard. And we can continue.
Okay, so first, I just want to take the time to have a diversity welcome. We want to welcome all religions, all nationalities, and citizenship statuses, all races, all genders and pronouns, all languages and sexualities, and all perspectives. We wanted to just make sure that this is a place where we are welcoming all people. We are not biased. We're not being judgmental in this area. And we want you guys to know that you can be free to be who you really are in this area. Again, thank you so much for attending the session today, and I will pass it to Alana.
Hey y'all, I'm just gonna go over the agenda for us real quick. So we just had our welcome and check-in with the games and everything, and we're gonna move into our focus groups pretty soon. And in those groups, there's a notepad activity and a spectrum activity, which is just how we're gonna get y'all's voices, and then we're gonna go into our closing. So I'm going to go over our goal for today. So our goal is to get feedback and outside evidence about how you guys feel with deputies in school and or counselors in school. Any experiences that you guys have, and we want to hear everything. We want to hear your concerns, your goals, everything. And how we're going to reach those goals today, we're going to use activities such as the COP word that just popped up, and we'll just start with this one. So if you guys can't use annotate, you can leave it in the chat, but just let us know, what are the first words, like what's your first initial thoughts when you see the word COP?
And I'll play music in the background as we're doing this.
Yeah, we'll just take a few minutes to look at it. We'll let y'all get started.
And you can also use the chat to kind of say your initial words if you can't annotate.
All right, y'all. So there's a lot of different words popping up. I'm seeing enforcement, trouble, protect, brutality. So we're just gonna do this same thing again, but on the contrary, it's gonna be with the word counselor. So, yeah, there it is. Okay, so just the same thing again, and don't forget that you guys can use the chat if that makes you more comfortable, and go ahead, we can get started.
I forgot I was supposed to play music. Okay.
You're good.
I'm noticing some of you guys already do it, but if you see in the annotation section that there's the stamp, you can use that and affirm something that someone has already written that you completely agree with as well. And we do have in the chat listening ears, which I think is a really, really eloquent way of describing how I feel about counselors as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And as we're closing this part up, I'm going to pass it to Mariah for the next section. You guys did great with that, and I appreciate all of the words that you guys shared.
Okay, so what are some experiences that you all have with counselors or SROs in your schools? Again, we're just trying to get your feedback. You can use annotation function and write on the sticky notes, or you can unmute yourselves and talk to us for maybe about like 30 seconds to a minute. Also, if you want to, utilize the chat function and type how you feel about this in the chat. So I'll give you a second to do that, and thank you.
And I'm going to go ahead and not play music for this in case anybody wants to share out loud. You guys can also think back to why you wrote the words you wrote on the word cop and why you wrote the words you wrote on the word counselor as you're thinking of the experiences you've had with each of them. And feel free to write it in the chat or on the sticky note with the annotate option.
Could I say something?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Talisa Elliott, and my pronouns are she, her, hers, just so that you all know. I go to White Station High School, and counseling there, in my opinion, is not what it should be. And counseling, I think that schools implement counseling for grades. You know, you have a problem, you have an issue, you can come here if something's wrong with your class, or maybe something got switched around, or if you don't feel well, you just go there. But I think counseling spaces need to be intentional about what they are doing for their kids. We go through a lot. Us as teenagers, we go through a lot. We have to deal with stuff at home, then we have to come to school, and then we have to deal with people at school. And counselors should be, it's like I put the word heal. They're there to cover up those wounds and to make sure that they can prevent some things before going back home to whatever it is you go back home to. But from own experiences, it's more so just a place where they're there to do the bare minimum, and I can't accept bare minimum.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I definitely agree with everything that you just said. That was a very impactful and insightful statement. So thank you so much. Would anyone else like to share?
I'll go. My name's Kayla. I use she, her pronouns. I go to Houston, so like I'm not in Shelby County, but I feel like when we talk about cops in schools and school resource officers, I don't think there's enough when it comes down to de-escalation or, using excessive force, because a lot of times kids in schools are going through a lot and it causes them to react, and there's not enough things, like they're not taking them to counselors to speak out, and like Lisa said, they're not really there to heal, they're only there for grades, and there's not enough reform for the kids to process things that they're going through at that time, and it feels like cops are just there to police them and sometimes not even protect them. So it's really an ineffective way for students to process things they're going through or talk about hardships they're going through when police in schools are using excessive force, or they're just being thrown into ISS or being suspended or being expelled, when we could be helping them go through traumatic things or go through hardships that they're, experiencing at the time. So that's my view on cops in schools and how counselors should be implemented and more resources should go to them.
Thank you so much for sharing. I think that actually goes perfectly with what someone else shared in the chat about how counselors are supposed to dig deeper and heal the wound, whereas cops are kind of like reactive instead of proactive in addressing the issue. And I think that's something that like is definitely something that we kind of want to have more conversation about within here, but also at a policy level on like a national level of why the roles of each of those is what it is. Someone said in the chat, specifically in public schools, there are more cops, rehabilitation versus brutality. And I invite you if you want to maybe expand on that. But I think that's really, really cool that we're opening this conversation really early on in this listening session. So if you want to, we can move on to the next question if no one else wants to speak to this specific question.
I wanted to add something, if that's okay. I think it's something important to think about. The common misconception with counselors is that they're supposed to be like the therapist of the school. And when people go to them, they're not getting the results they thought they were going to get, because the reality is most counselors, especially in Shelby County, they are not trained or actually went to college to get like a degree in psychology or to be a therapist per se. And they're kind of like admissions counselors. They're the ones helping people get into school or the people helping them go to college. And each school actually has or supposed to have a social worker for like when something traumatic happens. And so I think, and not saying instead of counselors we should say social. Oh wait, it's right there. Yes. But yeah, I think that's something important to think about, because I've had an experience, and I know a lot of people who have had bad experiences dealing with a school counselor because they weren't doing what they needed for them particularly. And not a lot of kids know that we have a social worker at our school, or we don't know how to reach them or contact them. And that's a big problem. Schools should make those people more accessible, because I do not know who my social worker at my school is. Yeah.
Could I add on to Nina's point really quickly?
Yeah.
Because I think she makes a really good one. I think the issue with that is with schools is that we have a lot of admissions counselors, but I think we need more people. We need more people because there are licensed therapists, there are licensed counselors that specifically study for children, for the psychology of children and to listen to children. And I think there are a lot of people like that in Memphis. And just like we can get new teachers or new history teacher, we can get new therapists. And I feel like if we can afford to do that, we can also afford to bring in licensed counselors. Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for making those comments. I honestly just learned a lot from just listening to you guys. So this was a very insightful discussion. Thank you guys so much for this.
So as we kind of rounded out that conversation talking about the role of counselors and hearing about experiences with counselors specifically in schools and how they seem to have, there's been a disconnection between like therapy-wise counseling and just trying to get to the next level of like education or technical school, and they're just helping specifically for that. We want to shift the conversation to talking about SROs. And so I want to ask you guys to use the annotation, or you can just comment on a scale of 1 to 10 in the chat about how comfortable you are with deputies in your school right now, with 1 being uncomfortable and 10 being comfortable or very comfortable. So I'm seeing a lot of neutral slash uncomfortable responses. Does anybody want to maybe speak to why they feel that way, or what about your relationship with the SROs makes you feel that level of comfortability?
I'll share. So, my name's Lee. I go to Houston School. So with our SROs, I like seeing them around, but I've never like really understood what they did. It would be mostly towards like a negative incident that happened is when I would see them respond to something, but never really anything positive. Like they're just, I feel like they're just kind of there to just like watch and like I can't think of the word, like a person that just kind of sees over stuff. Like
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's what their main job is in the school pretty much.
Yeah, I really agree with that. Thank you so much for sharing. So we have someone in the chat who shared they feel kind of uncomfortable, but not completely so, because they do know what to do if there's a school shooting, which I think is a really valid thing to be thinking about as a student that goes to school in America. But I feel like some students are put under stereotypes. Would anybody want to speak to either part of that?
Yeah,
talking about.
I will.
oh, go ahead.
Well, because I feel like if you hang out with certain people in a school, like you're put in a certain stereotype, like you'll get stares and stuff by teachers and police officers. But also, if there's a school shooting, then I would feel safer if there was a cop in the building.
I've actually done a lot of like research around this topic, and so I recently did some research got some research from some road students who were researching this issue, and I used to feel the same way about like if there was a school shooting, I'd be safer if there's a cop present, but a lot of research has shown that cops have, in cases of several school shootings, haven't done anything. Like a lot of people know about the cop from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High in Parkland who ran away from the school shooting. And so there's evidence that proves that having cops in schools isn't necessarily the key to stopping school shootings, or doesn't make school shootings safer for other students. This is just my personal opinion. Of course, everyone feels safe in different situations, and I completely respect that. But I used to believe that as well until just recently when I saw a lot of research that made me feel more unsafe for that.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I think we've really heard kind of like perspectives all along the spectrum, and I definitely have learned so much from you guys and hearing your guys' perspective. We do not have a bunch of time left, so this is we're gonna go a little bit more quickly on this question before we end with our main question. So I'll let Alana facilitate this one.
Yeah, thanks, Suha. And thank you all for like all of the diverse opinions and perspectives. It's really great to see it all being brought in one room with like all the confidence. Just on the contrary to the last question, this one is how comfortable would you be without deputies in your schools? So again, just annotating or using the chat and sharing out if you feel the need to, but we do only have 5 minutes, so maybe we won't share out on this one, maybe just in the chat.
Also, for anybody that has taken a moment to share out loud today, if you would feel comfortable doing so and think you're interested in sharing to public, what are they called? The county commissioners and our community leaders that are going to be here for the next portion of the session, we're going to have Sandy from Tech drop the chat to sign up to talk. And you can really talk about anything you learned today, any perspective that you're bringing to our conversation right now would be completely valid for you to bring up with county commissioners. So we'd love it if any of you guys would feel comfortable enough to talk, just because at the end of the day, this is the sort of thing that needs a wide policy change. And so it would be your guys' perspective kind of being the driving force for that.
Yeah, definitely. So there were a lot of different perspectives, and I saw that it was contrary to the last question where people were less comfortable. So now I'm gonna pass it to Naraya to explain this one.
So how do you guys envision counselors showing up in the school without deputies? Again, we don't have a lot of time, so if you're going to share, let's do it like at least 20 seconds maximum, or at least just put it in the chat, please. But I'm hearing a lot of good conversation and discussion. And again, we just want to remember that this is a space where where we're welcome to all opinions and all viewpoints. Thank you guys so much for being here and sharing. Yeah, I'll give you a second to do that.
Okay, really quickly, since we're down on time, I don't think we should discard of having officers in school completely, because they actually they keep it balanced. It's sad to say, but for some people, seeing a police officer puts fear in them, and that fear could be the reason why they are choosing not to do something crazy at the school. And it just keeps a level of respect and a little bit of control that is needed for certain schools. At my school, we have an officer, but I don't see them because we don't have that problem. So I think it's a case-to-case situation. It depends on the school in that district. So I think keeping that in mind is important.
I think that's an interesting perspective, actually, Nina. That's an interesting perspective. I've never heard that before. But I know at my school, during each lunch, there'll be like 3 police officers at the front, 3 or 4. And then in the hallway, there's like 2 or 3 of them. And just like, I hope I'm saying your name right, Zara, you said that there are cases and researchers proven that cops out of schools, it does help a little bit more. And that's because of this negative connotation around cops, but we also have to take in the cultural competence that comes with it, the stereotypes, what's happening in our world right now with cops, and how they are treating those in black and brown communities. And considering that my school is extremely diverse, that fear would be valid. But at the same time, having cops at the school, because we also have a problem with school shootings, but we have to also think that those school shootings, most of them at least that I've heard in the news, come from previous students that have gone to the school. And so it comes down to what could we do more on the rehabilitation side of things versus on the thing of we can just cover it up with another deputy. We can just cover it up with someone else to come in and enforce something else. Enforcement does not work. It is shown, it is proven. I've seen it with my own eyes. When you come in and pepper spray a kid, for breaking it up, it's just, it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I think that was really, we have a minute left, which is kind of scary. But if any of you guys who have shared in the chat, which the chat has been amazing, I really love reading these, or shared out loud, every single one of you brought this really unique perspective to today that I can't thank you enough to have. If you would feel comfortable with sharing it in front of community partners, I really do encourage you to sign up with the Google form. And with 30 seconds left, we're just gonna plug the future of Counselors Not Cops / Shelby County Youth. So we'll be sending out a survey after this town hall is over, just to hear you guys' feedback on this. And we will hopefully be reaching out to you guys again for our end of the year Shelby County Youth Summit, in which hopefully by then we'll be able to have implemented what we've learned from you guys today into